My name is Alex, and I'm 26 years old. For the past 8 years, I believed I had found my soulmate in friendship, not romantically. I'm talking about that once-in-a-lifetime connection where you meet someone who just gets you on every level. Someone who shares your dreams, your ambitions, and your vision for the future. Someone you trust completely, who you'd do anything for, and who you believe would do the same for you. I was wrong about that last part. This is the story of how my best friend Jason stole my business idea, made millions from it, and tried to gaslight me into believing it was his idea all along. It's also the story of how a simple habit of screenshotting funny conversations ended up being the key to getting justice and reclaiming everything that was rightfully mine. I met Jason during our freshman year at Stanford. We were both computer science majors, both from middle-class families who had sacrificed everything to give us a shot at a better life, and both completely obsessed with the idea of starting our own tech company someday. Jason was everything I wasn't: tall, charismatic, and effortlessly cool. He had this natural ability to walk into any room and immediately become the center of attention. People were drawn to him like a magnet. He could convince anyone of anything, and he had this infectious enthusiasm that made you believe that any crazy idea might actually work. I, on the other hand, was the quiet, analytical type. I was the one who stayed up all night coding, who could spot problems in business models from a mile away, and who actually knew how to build the technical solutions that Jason would dream up during our late-night brainstorming sessions. We complemented each other perfectly. Jason was the visionary and the salesman, and I was the engineer and the pragmatist. From day one, we talked about starting a company together after graduation. We spent countless hours in coffee shops and dorm rooms, sketching out business plans, researching markets, and fantasizing about the day we'd be featured on the cover of Forbes as the young entrepreneurs who changed the world. Our friendship wasn't just based on business ambitions. Jason became like a brother to me. We spent holidays together when we couldn't afford to fly home. We were each other's wingmen at parties, study partners during finals, and emotional support during the inevitable breakdowns that come with trying to survive at a place like Stanford. Jason was the best man at my sister's wedding. I helped him through his parents' messy divorce our junior year. We shared everything: our hopes, our fears, our stupidest ideas, and our biggest dreams. For 4 years, we were inseparable. Everyone on campus knew us as a package deal: Alex and Jason, the dynamic duo who were going to take Silicon Valley by storm. After graduation, we both moved to San Francisco and got jobs at different tech companies to gain experience and save money. The plan was always to work for a few years, learn the industry, and then strike out on our own together. Jason got hired at a hot startup as a product manager, while I went to work as a software engineer at a more established company. Even though we were working at different places, we still talked every day, bouncing ideas off each other and planning for our future venture. That's when I came up with the idea that would change both of our lives forever. The idea came to me on a Tuesday night in October 2021. I was working late, debugging some particularly nasty code, when I got frustrated trying to find a specific function in our massive codebase. Our company's internal search tools were garbage, and I found myself wishing there was a better way to search through code repositories, using natural language queries instead of exact syntax matches. But then I had a bigger thought. What if you could use AI to help developers not just search their code, but actually understand it, debug it, and even suggest improvements? This was before ChatGPT became mainstream, but I could see the potential for large language models to revolutionize how programmers worked. I spent the next 3 hours sketching out ideas, researching the technical feasibility, and getting more excited by the minute. By 2 a.m., I had the basic framework for an AI-powered coding assistant that could integrate with popular development environments and help programmers write better code faster. The first person I wanted to share this with was Jason. I called him immediately, despite the late hour. "Dude, you're not going to believe what I just came up with," I said as soon as he picked up Alex. "It's 2 a.m., this better be good." "It's better than good. It's our ticket to the big leagues." I spent the next hour walking Jason through my idea. I explained how AI could be trained on massive code repositories to understand programming patterns and best practices, how it could analyze a developer's code in real time, and suggest optimizations, catch bugs before they became problems, and even help junior developers learn by explaining what different code snippets actually do. Jason was immediately hooked. "Holy shit, Alex, this is huge. This could be worth hundreds of millions if we do it right." "I know, right? And the timing is perfect. AI is just starting to get good enough to make this work. but no one else is focusing on the developer market specifically. We stayed on the phone until 4 a.m. refining the concept and talking about how we could bring it to market. Jason's enthusiasm was infectious, and by the end of the call, I was convinced we had stumbled onto something that could change the world. The next few months were a blur of activity. I spent every spare moment working on a prototype, while Jason researched the market, identified potential competitors, and started thinking about fundraising strategies. We documented everything in shared Google Docs, exchanged hundreds of text messages about features and go-to-market strategies, and met every weekend to work on our business plan. Jason even came up with the name Coder Genius, which I thought was perfect. By January 2022, I had built a working prototype that could integrate with Visual Studio Code and provide basic AI-powered code suggestions. It wasn't polished, but it was functional enough to demonstrate the concept. Jason was blown away when I showed it to him. "Alex, this is incredible. We need to start talking to investors immediately. Don't you think we should refine it a bit more first? The UI is pretty rough, and there are still some bugs in the AI model. No way, this is good enough to get meetings. We need to move fast before someone else beats us to market." Jason's urgency made sense. The tech industry moves at lightning speed, and being first to market with a new concept can mean the difference between becoming the next Google and becoming a footnote in someone else's success story. We started preparing for investor meetings. I focused on perfecting the technical demo while Jason worked on the pitch deck and practiced his presentation skills. We agreed that Jason would do most of the talking during investor meetings. He was much better at sales than I was, while I would handle the technical details. Everything seemed to be falling into place. We had a revolutionary product, a solid business plan, and 8 years of friendship and trust between us. What I didn't realize was that Jason had already decided he didn't need me anymore. The first sign that something was wrong came in March 2022. Jason and I had scheduled a meeting with a venture capital firm called Summit Ventures, and I had spent weeks preparing for what could be the most important presentation of our lives. The night before the meeting, Jason called me with unexpected news. "Hey Alex, I have some bad news about tomorrow's meeting." "What's wrong? Did they cancel?" "No, but they asked if I could come in alone first for a preliminary conversation. They want to get a feel for the leadership team before they commit to a full presentation." This seemed odd to me. In all my research about VC meetings, I'd never heard of investors wanting to meet with just one founder first. Why wouldn't they want to meet both of us? We're supposed to be I think it's just a logistics thing. They have a busy schedule, and it's easier to coordinate with one person for the initial meeting. If it goes well, they'll want to meet you next week. "I don't know, Jason. Shouldn't we be presenting this together? You're great at the business side, but what if they have technical questions? I've been watching your demos for months. I can handle the technical overview." "Look, Alex, I know this isn't ideal, but sometimes we have to be flexible with investors. They're doing us a favor by taking the meeting at all." Jason's explanation made some sense, but something about it felt wrong. We had always planned to present together, and suddenly changing the plan at the last minute seemed like a red flag. But I trusted Jason completely. We had been best friends for 8 years, and partners in this venture for 6 months. If he thought this was the right approach, I had to believe he knew what he was doing. "Okay," I said reluctantly, "but promise me you'll set up the follow-up meeting with both of us as soon as possible." "Of course. This is our company, Alex. I would never do anything to cut you out." That was the first lie Jason told me, but it wouldn't be the last. Jason's meeting with Summit Ventures apparently went very well. He called me afterward, excited and optimistic. "They loved it, Alex. They want to move to the next stage of due diligence." "That's amazing. When do they want to meet with me?" "Soon. They're just trying to coordinate schedules." "But Alex, there is one thing we need to discuss." "What?" "They had some concerns about the equity split. They think that since I'm handling all the business development and fundraising, and I'll be the CEO, maybe the split shouldn't be exactly 50-50. My stomach dropped. "What are you talking about? We agreed on equal partnership from the beginning." "I know, but they made some good points. The CEO typically gets a larger equity stake, and I'm the one who's been interfacing with investors and customers. They suggested maybe 60-40 in my favor." "Jason, the entire product is based on my idea and my code. You can't run this company without the technical foundation I built." "Of course not. And you'd still be the CTO with a huge equity stake. 40% of a $100 million company is still $40 million. The way Jason was talking about this, like it was already decided, like my opinion was just a minor obstacle to overcome, made me realize that something fundamental had changed in our relationship. I need to think about this, I told him. Sure, take your time, but Alex, we can't let equity negotiations slow down our momentum. Summit wants to move quickly, and we can't afford to lose this opportunity. That night, I couldn't sleep. Jason and I had been equal partners in this venture from day one. The idea was mine, the prototype was mine, and half of the business plan had been my work. The thought of accepting a junior position in my own company felt like a betrayal of everything we had built together. But Jason was right about one thing. He was better at the business side than I was. Maybe the investors had a point about CEO equity. Maybe I was being selfish by insisting on an equal split. The next morning, I called Jason and agreed to the 60-40 split, with the condition that my role as CTO and my contributions to the technology would be clearly documented and protected. You're making the right choice, Alex. This is going to make us both rich. 2 weeks later, Jason told me that Summit Ventures had decided not to invest after all. He said they were concerned about the competitive landscape and wanted to see more traction before committing to a funding round. I was disappointed but not surprised. Fundraising is notoriously difficult, and most startups get rejected by multiple investors before finding the right fit. What's our next move? I asked. I've got meetings lined up with 3 other firms. We'll find the right partner. But as the weeks went by, Jason became increasingly evasive about the status of our fundraising efforts. Our weekend working sessions became less frequent, and Jason always seemed to have excuses for why he couldn't meet. I'm traveling for work a lot, he'd say, or I'm dealing with some personal stuff right now, or the investors want to wait until after the summer to make decisions. By July 2022, I was starting to get suspicious. Jason and I barely talked anymore, and when we did, he seemed distracted and secretive. I hadn't seen him work on CodeGenius in months, and I was beginning to wonder if he had lost interest in the project entirely. That's when I decided to do some digging on my own. I started by researching the VC firms that Jason claimed had rejected us. What I found made my blood run cold. Summit Ventures, the firm that had supposedly loved our pitch but ultimately passed, had no record of meeting with Jason or evaluating our company. When I called their office and asked about CodeGenius, they had never heard of us. The same was true for the other 3 firms Jason claimed to be in discussions with. None of them had any record of our company or our pitch. Jason had been lying to me for months about our fundraising efforts. But why? I spent the next week doing deeper research, and what I discovered was devastating. There was a company called Devasys that had just launched in stealth mode, offering an AI-powered coding assistant that was remarkably similar to CodeGenius. Devasys' website was polished and professional, with demo videos showing functionality that looked almost identical to what I had built. The company had raised $15 million in Series A funding from a top-tier VC firm, and they were already beta testing with major tech companies. The founder and CEO of Devasys was listed as Jason Chen. My best friend had stolen my idea, built a competing product, and raised millions of dollars, all while lying to me about our supposed fundraising difficulties. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. 8 years of friendship, 6 months of partnership, and countless hours of shared dreams had been thrown away so Jason could get rich off my work. But I needed to be sure before I confronted him. I needed proof. I started by examining Devasys' product more closely. The AI model they were using appeared to be based on the same architecture I had developed for CodeGenius. The user interface was different, but the core functionality was identical to my prototype. More damning was Devasys' marketing copy, which used several phrases that Jason and I had coined together during our brainstorming sessions. Terms like intelligent code completion and AI-powered debugging companion were uncommon. Industry language. There were specific phrases we had developed to describe our unique approach. Then I found Devasys' patent filings. The company had filed for 3 patents covering various aspects of their AI coding technology. The filing dates were all in April 2022. Just 1 month after Jason's supposed meeting with Summit Ventures. I was looking at a systematic theft of intellectual property that had been planned and executed, while Jason was still pretending to be my business partner. I called Jason that night, trying to keep my voice steady. Hey Jason, I wanted to check in about CodeGenius. It's been a while since we talked about our progress. Oh, hey Alex, yeah, things have been slow on the investor front. I'm still working on it, but the market is tough right now, really, because I've been doing some research. And it looks like there are some companies in our space that are getting funded. Which companies? Well, there's one called Devasys that just raised $15 million. There was a long pause on the phone. When Jason spoke again, his voice was different, tighter, more defensive. I haven't heard of them. What do they do? AI-powered coding assistants. Pretty much exactly what we were building. Well, there's room for multiple players in any market. We just need to differentiate ourselves. Jason, I looked at their product demo. It's identical to CodeGenius. I mean identical. Same features, same UI concepts. Even some of the same marketing language we developed. Another long pause. Alex, you're being paranoid. AI coding tools are an obvious idea. Of course there are going to be similarities between different products. Jason, are you involved with Devarsist in any way? What? No. Why would you even ask that? Because their CEO has the same last name as you. Chen is a common last name. Alex, you're really reaching here. Jason, their CEO is named Jason Chen. The silence that followed lasted for almost 30 seconds. Alex, I can explain. Jason finally said, I'm listening. I was planning to tell you about this, but I wanted to wait until I had all the details worked out. Tell me about what? Jason, I got approached by some investors who were interested in the coding assistant space. They offered me a chance to build something similar to CodeGenius, but with better funding and resources. You mean they offered you a chance to steal my idea and cut me out completely? It's not like that, Alex. This is a separate project. Your CodeGenius idea is still yours. Jason, I've seen Devarsist's patents. They're filing for intellectual property protection on the exact same technology I developed. How is that not stealing my idea? Look, Alex, ideas are cheap. Execution is what matters. You had a good concept, but you were never going to be able to scale it properly. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Jason was trying to gaslight me into believing that stealing my entire business concept was somehow justified because he could execute better than I could. Jason, we were supposed to be partners. We spent months developing this together, and I appreciate all your work on the early prototype. But Alex, be realistic. You're not CEO material. You don't have the network, the fundraising experience, or the business skills to build a real company. So you decided to steal my technology and build it yourself. I didn't steal anything. I built a better version from scratch. That was Jason's second major lie, and it was about to cost him everything. After my confrontation with Jason, I was devastated but also angry. Jason had betrayed our friendship and stolen my life's work, but he was trying to make me feel like I was the unreasonable one for being upset about it. I spent the next few days in a haze, trying to figure out what to do next. I could sue Jason, but lawsuits are expensive and time-consuming, and I wasn't sure I had enough evidence to prove that he had stolen my intellectual property. That's when I remembered something that would change everything. I had been taking screenshots of our text conversations for months. It started as a joke between us. Jason would send me funny memes or ridiculous messages at weird hours, and I'd screenshot them to share with other friends or to save for later when I needed a laugh. I had been doing it so consistently that I had hundreds of screenshots saved in a folder on my phone called Jason Texts. I started going through these screenshots, and what I found was better than any legal smoking gun I could have hoped for. I had captured Jason's messages from our very first conversation about the CodeGenius idea in October 2021. The screenshots clearly showed Jason's initial reaction. Holy shit, Alex, this is huge. This could be worth hundreds of millions if we do it right. I had screenshots of Jason saying this is our company, Alex, when discussing equity splits. I had his messages about how we would change the world together, and how he was lucky to have a technical co-founder like you. Most damaging of all, I had screenshots from March 2022, right around the time Jason was supposedly meeting with Summit Ventures, where he had texted me technical questions about the AI model architecture. How did you train the model to understand code context across different programming languages? He had asked. Can you send me the technical specs? I want to make sure I can explain it properly to investors. I had sent Jason detailed technical documentation about my AI model, my training datasets, and my proprietary algorithms. The screenshots proved that Jason had requested this information specifically, and that I had shared it with him in good faith as my business partner. But the most damning evidence came from Jason's own words in our text conversations. In April 2022, the same month Devarsist filed their patents, Jason had sent me a message that made his intentions crystal clear. Alex, I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday. What if we approached this differently? What if instead of trying to fundraise for CodeGenius, I explored some other opportunities in the AI space? I have some connections that might be interested in backing a different kind of project. I had responded, what kind of different project? I thought we were committed to Jason's reply. Something similar, but maybe more focused on enterprise customers. I think there's a bigger opportunity there. Jason had literally told me he was planning to build something similar to Codegenius while still pretending to be my business partner. The screenshots proved premeditation and intent to steal my intellectual property. I had over 200 screenshots spanning 8 months of conversations, and they told a clear story. Jason and I had developed Codegenius together. He had gained access to my proprietary technology as my partner, and then he had used that technology to build a competing company. While lying to me about our fundraising progress, I took all of this evidence to an intellectual property attorney named Sarah Martinez who specialized in tech startup disputes. This is one of the strongest cases I've ever seen. Sarah told me after reviewing the screenshots, "Your friend made the classic mistake of documenting his theft in writing. What are my options? We can file a lawsuit for theft of trade secrets, breach of fiduciary duty, and fraud. The text messages prove that he gained access to your proprietary technology as your partner, and then used it to build a competing business. What about the patents Devasist filed? Those patents are going to be invalidated. Your screenshots prove that you developed the technology first, and that Jason only had access to it through your partnership. He can't legally patent technology that he stole from you. How long will this take? Given the strength of your evidence, I think we can get an injunction to stop Devasist from operating while the case is pending, and I think Jason will want to settle quickly once he realizes what kind of evidence we have." Sarah was right. Within 48 hours of receiving our initial legal filing, Jason's attorney called to discuss settlement terms. The lawsuit one filed against Jason and Devasist was comprehensive and devastating. Sarah had used my screenshots to build a case that covered theft of trade secrets, breach of fiduciary duty, fraud, and patent interference. The screenshots were so damaging that Jason's own attorney recommended he settle immediately rather than go to trial. "Mr. Chen," Sarah told Jason's lawyer during our first settlement conference, "your client documented his theft in excruciating detail. We have text messages where he specifically asks my client for technical specifications, promises partnership, and then discusses building a similar competing product. This isn't a case you want to take to a jury." Jason's initial settlement offer was insulting, $50,000, and a promise to differentiate Devasist's product from my technology. It was clear that Jason still didn't understand the strength of my position, or he was hoping I'd be too intimidated by the legal process to fight for what I deserved. Sarah's response was swift and brutal. She filed for an emergency injunction to shut down Devasist's operations immediately, pending resolution of the case. The injunction hearing was scheduled for a Thursday morning in federal court. I had never been inside a courtroom before, and I was nervous about testifying. But Sarah had prepared me well, and I had something that most plaintiffs in intellectual property cases don't have: overwhelming documentary evidence. Jason showed up to the hearing looking haggard and defeated. When he saw me across the courtroom, he wouldn't make eye contact. The hearing lasted 3 hours. Sarah presented my screenshots in chronological order, building a timeline that showed Jason's progression from trusted partner to calculating thief. She showed the judge Jason's messages asking for technical specifications, his promises of partnership, and his eventual admission that he was building something similar to my idea. Jason's attorney tried to argue that the ideas were obvious and that Jason had independently developed his technology, but when Sarah presented Devasist's patent filings side by side with my original technical documentation, it became clear that Jason had copied my work almost verbatim. The judge granted our injunction immediately. The evidence presented suggests that Mr. Chen gained access to proprietary technology through a partnership agreement, and then used that technology to build a competing business while misrepresenting his intentions to the original inventor. The judge said, "Devasist is hereby enjoined from operating until this matter is resolved." Devasist's $15 million in funding was frozen. Their beta customers were informed that the service would be discontinued indefinitely. Jason's company was effectively dead. But the real victory came 3 weeks later, when Jason called me personally to discuss settlement. "Alex, we need to talk," Jason said. His voice sounded tired and defeated. "I'm listening. My investors are pulling out. The injunction killed all our customer relationships, and our patent applications are being challenged. I can't keep Devasist running." "Good. Alex, I want to make this right. I know I messed up, but we used to be best friends. Can't we work something out?" "Jason, you had 8 months to make this right. You chose to lie to me instead." I was going to bring you in as a partner once Devassist got established. I swear I was planning to share the success with you. Even in defeat, Jason was still lying to me. The screenshots I had showed his real intentions clearly. He had never planned to include me in Devassist's success. Jason, I have your text messages. I know exactly what you were planning, and it wasn't sharing anything with me. There was a long silence on the phone. What do you want, Alex? I want justice. The final settlement was everything I could have hoped for. Jason agreed to transfer all Devassist intellectual property, including patents, trademarks, and source code, to me, pay me $2.8 million in damages. Representing the money he had raised using my stolen technology, provide a public statement acknowledging that the core technology behind Devassist was developed by me. Sign a non-compete agreement preventing him from working in the AI coding assistance space for 5 years. Most importantly, Jason had to dissolve Devassist completely and return all remaining investor funds. I used the settlement money to launch my own company, which I called CodeGenius, the original name Jason and I had chosen together. But this time, I was building it on my own terms, with my own team, and with full control over my intellectual property. The irony was perfect. Jason had stolen my idea to get rich quick, but his theft had ultimately made me richer, and more successful than I ever would have been as his junior partner. CodeGenius launched 6 months after the settlement was finalized. Without Jason's interference, and with the resources from the settlement, I was able to build a much better product than either CodeGenius or Devassist had been. I hired a team of brilliant engineers, formed partnerships with major development platforms, and raised $25 million in Series A funding from top-tier VCs, including Summit Ventures, the firm that had supposedly rejected Jason and me 2 years earlier. We're excited to back the real innovator in this space, the partner at Summit told me during our funding announcement. We actually met with someone else who claimed to have invented this technology, but it was clear he didn't understand the technical details. Jason had apparently tried to pitch Summit Ventures with my stolen technology, but without me there to handle the technical questions, he had been exposed as a fraud. The launch of CodeGenius was covered extensively in the tech press, and several articles mentioned the legal battle with Devassist. Jason's reputation in the startup community was destroyed, and he became a cautionary tale about the dangers of betraying business partners. The final chapter of this story came 1 year after CodeGenius launched. We had grown to 50 employees, signed partnerships with Google and Microsoft, and were processing millions of lines of code every day for developers around the world. I received an email from Jason, the first communication we'd had since the settlement was finalized. Alex, he wrote, I've been following CodeGenius's success, and I'm genuinely happy for you. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I wanted you to know that I'm sorry. I was greedy and stupid, and I destroyed the best friendship I ever had for money that I ended up losing anyway. I hope someday you can forgive me. I stared at that email for a long time before deciding how to respond. Jason, I wrote back, I appreciate your apology, but forgiveness doesn't undo the damage you did. You didn't just steal my business idea. You stole a year of my life and destroyed my trust in friendship. I've moved on and built something better than what we ever could have created together. I hope you've learned something from this experience, but I have no interest in rebuilding our relationship. I never heard from Jason again. Today, CodeGenius is valued at over $100 million. We're the market leader in AI-powered development tools, and we're helping thousands of programmers write better code every day. I have a team I trust, investors who believe in our vision, and the satisfaction of knowing that I built this company on my own merit. Jason, meanwhile, is working as a product manager at a mid-sized tech company in Austin. His LinkedIn profile no longer mentions Devassist or his entrepreneurial experience. He's just another employee now, and his dreams of startup success died with the company he built on stolen technology. The lesson I learned from this experience isn't just about business or intellectual property protection. It's about the importance of documentation and the power of evidence. Those screenshots I took as a joke ended up being worth millions of dollars and saved my entire career. If I hadn't had that digital paper trail, Jason might have gotten away with his theft, and I might have spent years believing that my best friend had simply out-executed me with a similar idea. Instead, I had proof of exactly what had happened, when it had happened, and what Jason's real intentions had been. Technology betrayed Jason in the end. The same smartphones and messaging apps that he used to coordinate his theft also created the permanent record that brought him down. Justice isn't always served in business. But sometimes, if you're prepared and you fight for what's right, the truth wins. And the truth, as captured in 200 screenshots, was that Jason stole my idea, lied to my face, and got exactly what he deserved.